Well, hello. This is the second part to a much longer reaction. If you haven't seen them yet, links to them are in the description as well in the top corner of the video. Now, with that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Take actions that don't make sense. And you could see how this would play into the strip search scams. The person on the other end of the line is definitely using some kind of inherent fear of authority, but combining it with this strange social manipulation, making this girl believe that she's causing trouble for everyone around her by not complying. And so she did. He normalizes that idea among other employees, meaning however unfairly or cruelly they treat her, to them it feels justified because she's no longer one of them. And it makes me think of that moment from the lottery. Imagine being one of the people hurling those stones. No matter how uncomfortable or even disgusted you might feel at doing this, would there not be some subtle relief in the fact that you were the one throwing those stones and not being obliterated by them? Some subtle glee in the fact that by doing this, you are proving to everyone around you that you are part of the group. You belong. You can see this dynamic play out in any number of historical atrocities, or more relevantly and recently, whatever social media mauling is taking place this month. And I don't even need to point to a specific one, do I? You already know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you have probably even participated. That's okay. We're pack animals. It's literally how we evolved, right back to the days when our ability to integrate into a strong group was the only thing between us and starvation or cold or hungry predators. Any perceived threat to that group had to be removed, even if it was one of our own. Those days are long gone now, but we still do this.
It's that old antiquated piece of software sitting in the back of the operating system that sometimes you get somebody who can backdoor their way into it and cause all sorts of mischief.
And perception, humiliation, and paranoia, those are just the tools our brain uses to enforce that. And what it results in is this unspoken, invisible social pressure that we all do to each other. And the disturbing part is that if that social pressure is strong enough, it can erase us. The town of Stepford is a serene suburban dream, miles from the chaos and noise of the large cities, and that's why Joanna, her husband, and their children have decided to move here. Joanna is the whole thing with Stepford, the Stepford Wives. She's also a passionate photographer. She's interested in politics, social change, and runs women's groups. She has a life and identity that extends beyond the walls of her home, which may be why something about this town feels so wrong. It's not that the other women of Stepford seem unhappy, it's nearly the opposite. They are uniformly blissful in their existence. In fact, they all look the same, they all dress the same, they all act the same and speak the same, and any attempt to speak to them about anything beyond cooking, cleaning, and their husbands is met with blank stares and lingering silence. Something about this place doesn't make sense. Sometimes the women begin to act in strange ways, speaking nonsensically or repeating the same words or phrases. The only other seemingly normal woman in Stepford is Bobby. Joanna and Bobby bonding over how strange this place feels, how isolated they feel from the other women, and so they begin to try and piece together exactly what is happening, and that is until, after a weekend away with her husband, Bobby returns, clad in the same billowing apron and dress, now uninterested in talking about anything beyond household products, indistinguishable from the other wives of Stepford. All that was fun and spirited about her, gone. The reason for this, spoiler warning, is is that the women of Stepford are actually being replaced by lifelike robots, machines whose only desire is to cook, clean, and satisfy their husbands.
I'm sorry? I remember seeing like the remake that came after this. When did the remake come out? 2004. Okay, yeah. I remember I've seen the 2004 version, and I thought that whole plot line about robots was something that they added into the sequel. I thought the original had more to do with brainwashing. Well, okay then. Jeez.
And as Joanne struggles against this horrifying realization, she comes face to face with something truly awful. The robot designed to replace her. A ghoulish approximation of who she is, with swollen breasts and dead eyes. In the final scene of the movie, we pan across rows of identical shopping aisles, filled with identical women, before slowly zooming in on this Joanne, now indistinguishable from the other wives of Stepford. Everything about her now hollowed and empty, her identity erased.
Jeez.
The Stepford Wives was not well received when it first released in 1972, offending pretty much everybody. It was considered a lowbrow piece of garbage sci-fi, and to a degree, I get that. This is a film in which the central premise involves a group of men wanting to fuck a bunch of animatronic robots. However, in the years since, the film has been celebrated as a cult classic, and I think the reason for that goes beyond its campy appeal, as it does touch on something really genuinely horrifying. This concept of depersonalization, the idea that you stop being you in the face of overwhelming societal expectation. And you can see depersonalization in action every day in your own life. Look at how you might act at work or school versus how you might be around your friends versus by yourself. It's very normal, but it's also kind of creepy, right? This idea that we are constantly overwriting parts of ourselves to meet the expectations of the people around us. And I think what's so disturbing about this final scene is the horror of coming face to face with the version of yourself that everyone else thinks you should be. Your inadequacies, your imperfections, your identity erased. This invisible social force we all feel transforming us into something we're not. Whew. Now that's spooky.
Very,
there isn't some even more extreme and creepy social experiments that backs up this idea, because man, that would be pretty scary. The smoky room experiment is a variant on
oh god, there it gets worse.
Test, and again involves a participant entering a room full of actors. The participant is asked to fill out a form, but as they do, smoke begins to pour into the room, with a fire alarm sounding, to which the actors have been instructed not to react in any way. What's interesting is that if this test is run with a single person in an empty room, 100% of the time they will immediately exit the room. However, when placed in a room full of people not reacting to this potentially life-threatening scenario, well, what do you think happens?
Normal people, yes. Me, no. Not so much the Asperger's, but I was the son of a firefighter, so, staying low and away from the smoke has kind of been drilled into me.
What percentage of participants do you think will ignore the danger directly in front of them and continue with their worksheet?
I'm gonna aim pretty high and say like 80%. 85%.
Guessed as high as 50%, you were incorrect because the answer is 90%.
Okay, never mind. Evidently, not many of them are the children of firefighters.
90% of people chose to sit silently rather than acknowledge that anything is wrong. But where this gets real bonkers bananas is what happens in this particular study to the one person who raises the alarm. Very early on, one participant notices the smoke. He asks, "What's that coming out from under the door?" He checks the door. He declares to the room it's fire and immediately heads for the exit, only for the rest of the group to assure him he's supposed to wait here. And you can see he thinks this is insane. He places his hand on the door to leave. He pushes the door open and stops. He keeps listening to the people around him, and soon he sits back down with everyone else.
Okay, well, it's confirmed. Everybody's an idiot.
The room filling with smoke as he does. He did eventually leave after 12 minutes, which would have proved difficult in a real fire as he would be dead from smoke inhalation. And the thing is, people have actually died this way. A 1979 fire at a Woolworths in London killed 10 people, all of whom were located in the shop's restaurants. A London firefighter claiming that the reason the people didn't make it out on time is that they were waiting to pay for their meals, none wanting to be the first to break this social taboo and leave. That's how powerful the idea of depersonalization can be.
I swear, in this case, I mean, which is more important, capitalism or your life?
It can override something as primal as our own survival instinct. And oh, it's a good thing there's no horror film based on that idea. Speak No Evil begins with our protagonist Bjorn and Louise holding by the poolside with their daughter, which is where a man approaches Bjorn and asks, is the sunbed next to him free? And despite the fact that it obviously isn't, Bjorn's things are all over it, Bjorn, rather than create an awkward moment, gives it to him. This man is Patrick, and over the course of the holiday, Bjorn and Louise have several more encounters with him and his wife Karen. And you know what? Patrick actually kinda rules. He's friendly and outgoing, and he has this boundless love and enthusiasm for the world around him.
So how's
when
this
he
gonna
finds
go
out Louise
weird?
is a vegetarian, he raves about how great that is, how she's saving the world. And when he hears about how Bjorn spent the entire day recovering his child's lost toy, he tells him that's incredible. He tells Bjorn that he's a hero. And to Bjorn, this means a lot. Bjorn has spent his entire life doing the things he's supposed to do, and he's tired. He's tired of smiling politely. He's tired of going to dinner with people he doesn't even like. But then there's Patrick, this loud, confident, uninhibited man who sees something in Bjorn, and that means a lot to him. Over the course of the holiday, the four become friends, to the point that later that year, Bjorn and Louise are invited to stay in Patrick and Karen's rural home in the Netherlands. And
oh no, is this where this stuff goes weird?
Invited, they decide to, because after all, it would be rude not to. Bjorn and Louise make the long drive with their daughter, and when they arrive, things seem okay. But as Patrick prepares dinner, something unusual happens. Patrick insists Louise try his roast boar, but remember, Louise is a vegetarian and she says no, but Patrick ignores her, and the moment just hangs in the air, before finally Louise relents.
Oh god, is this where this is going? Oh no.
It's just one bite of boar after all, it's not a big deal, but later at dinner, when Louise again points out she's a vegetarian, Patrick says this. Oh yeah, so good for the environment, but you eat fish, right? So you're not a vegetarian, you're a pescatarian. He then continues to drill her on the damage the fishing industry does, and it's uncomfortable. Whereas before, being a vegetarian was this defining part of Louise to Patrick, now it's like he's taking that away from her. And the problem is that it's not the only thing. Patrick is still friendly, he's still fun, but he can also be so odd. He
Mm.
belittles Bjorn and Louise's country. He smokes in front of them without asking. He expects them to pay for expensive meals. He drives them home drunk and ignores them when they scream at him to turn down the music. The longer Louise and Bjorn stay in this place, the more bizarre Patrick and Karen's behavior becomes. Patrick will use the toilet while they're trying to take a shower. He lets strange men watch their children. He gets inappropriate with his wife in front of them. He screams and manhandles his child. It's like Bjorn and Louise are constantly being put in these scenarios where they should say something, they should point out how inconsiderate Patrick's being, but they also want to believe everything is okay. They don't want to acknowledge the crawling feeling that something is not right here, even if it means enduring things they shouldn't. And it's torturous to watch. It's like someone made an entire movie out of that line from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It's hard to believe that fear of offending can be stronger than fear of pain, but you know what? It is.
You know what? I'm going to be completely honest here. I am, just from like the secondhand embarrassment or cringe from this entire video, I'm very much thinking this was a mistake to watch. This video is painful.
Late one night, after being intimate with Bjorn, Louise discovers that their daughter is no longer in her bed and finds her sleeping with a naked Patrick and Karen. This is the breaking point. Louise and Bjorn, disturbed by whatever is happening here, flee from the house in the early morning. And as the viewer, the sense of relief you feel as you watch their car race past the Netherlands countryside is immense. Louise and Bjorn have followed their better instincts. They've avoided some strange, ambiguous danger, and now have the rest of their days ahead of them as we cut to credits to the sound of Bon Jovi's It's My Life. Only that's not what happens.
Oh.
That's not what happens at all.
Oh no.
Bjorn and Louise's daughter has forgotten her teddy bear back at the house. Against every survival instinct within them, Bjorn and Louise turn the car around and drive back to the house, and waiting for them are Patrick and Karen.
Why? It's a teddy bear. My little brother lost his teddy bear when he was a baby in Lithuania. We ended up just buying him a new one. Oh God, I'm being completely honest here. This video, it's not good for my heart.
Who act heartbroken that their friends tried to leave without telling them. Louise tries to explain. She tries to tell them how something here just feels so wrong and that you can't take another person's child like that. But Karen and Patrick politely, gently explain it all away. Your daughter was upset and we just wanted to make sure she was okay because, after all, you weren't coming.
Okay, that would be getting a knuckle sandwich. I don't care.
This is all just a big misunderstanding. There's nothing going on here. So surely it'll be okay if they stay for just one more night. It isn't. After enduring the most horrific day of their entire lives, Bjorn and Louise have had everything taken away from them. Their daughter, their clothes, every personal boundary and sense of self-preservation. They know they're about to die here, but they do nothing. And the fucked up part is that Patrick and Karen don't even have any weapons, but they don't need them. They have so thoroughly dismantled these people peeling back the layers of who they are and leaving them as these naked, quivering husks. It's in this scene that comes the most chilling moment of the entire movie, when Bjorn asks,
"Why are you doing this?" "Because you let me."
What's so disturbing about this moment is that Patrick is right. Bjorn and Louise are these people who have been molded by the perceptions of others, afraid of anything that might lead to the slightest instance of humiliation or offense. And because of that, they've spent their entire lives existing within the social expectations of other people. And all Patrick and Karen have done is weaponize that. They've weaponized the process of depersonalization. They've manipulated these people's inherent desire to conform to the point that they can no longer even see the danger right in front of them. And what kills me is that this is the exact thing we saw in the smoky room experiment. And it's such a disturbing implication. It's like all it takes is the right assurance from the right people, and we stop perceiving reality correctly.
Whole thing with stuff like this, I want to believe that people are better, that people aren't this gullible, that people aren't this, that people can't be manipulated like this. And just the idea that this is at all possible, stuff like this is that stuff like this is at all possible. It just it's literally making me queasy.
Which brings us to this really chilling idea. Other people are not a part of our reality. They are our reality.
I'm not going to do that thing again where I pretend that there isn't a film that explores this idea. There just is, and
of course there is.
Going to talk about it.
Of course.
Now.
Yay! Wonderful.
I acknowledge this isn't my strongest segue.
In an opening scene of Beau is Afraid, our main character Beau steps out of his therapist's office onto the streets of a nameless city, and immediately we can see in the background a woman holding a sign that reads, "I will cut my own hands off." A vendor next to her sells semi-automatic weapons to children, cults recruit openly in the street, and a man joyously breakdances in front of a building from the roof of which a person is about to hurl themselves to their death. All while gleeful onlookers encourage them to do so, excited to capture the moment on their phones.
What?
This is a world where dead bodies rot openly in the streets, where needles hang visibly from the arms of vagrants, and the pulsing sounds of screams, gunshots, and violence fill the skyline. A place of constant surging madness, where people aren't so much people as they are terrifying human-shaped nightmares. There is this world, and then there is Beau. And Beau is everything this world isn't. He's pleasant and quiet and shy, and most of all, he just wants to be left alone. However, from the moment he tries to enter his apartment, at which point he is chased by a devil-faced lunatic, to the graffiti in his lobby that simply reads, "Kill children," to the news report that plays on television warning of a naked man knifing people in the neck and guts dubbed the "birthday boy stab man," to the strange notes he receives in the middle of the night threatening him to turn down music he is not playing. It's obvious that peace eludes Beau. This world of churning madness is constantly pressing in on him.
Okay, I've never seen this movie before, but why do I get the feeling, given that, say, he was coming out of a therapist's office, that none of this is real?
And Beau is afraid. The main source of that fear being other people. Every moment he's forced to interact with another person is just this hellish nightmare, beautifully elicited by this shot of Beau attempting to cross the street to his local grocery store.
Help me! Help me! Help me!
Did that guy have like a jar of money? What was that?
Beau is Afraid is a panic attack of a movie, and I adore it. However, the film was both critically and commercially a disaster, being unfavorably compared to director Adi Astar's previous movies Hereditary and Midsommar, both of which were box office meteor smashes of occultic horror. Beau being neither of those things.
Is that a shoe?
$25 million and mauled by fans for not being a true horror movie. But to me, saying Beau is Afraid is a bad traditional horror movie is like saying the Mona Lisa is the worst automobile ever created. You're not wrong, you're just not right either. This is a movie designed to force you into this horrifying world of social anxiety through the eyes of someone who absolutely cannot handle it. And it wears you down over its 3-hour runtime as Beau is propelled from nightmare scenario to nightmare scenario that begins with a chain reaction of horrifying events that involves Beau missing a flight to go visit his mother after his passport vanishes. I know that doesn't sound scary. It is. Only for her head to be crushed by a giant chandelier, causing Beau to flee naked into the streets, struck by a car and awaken 3 days later and receive this phone call from his mother's lawyer. And just listen to the neutron star levels of social pressure applied here.
It was your mother's unfortunate wish that she not be buried without you present. The burial has been outrageously postponed. There is no rest for her. And there has been no rest for the people that love her. So we are waiting, Beau. And every minute more that we wait only deepens the humiliation.
And so we have Beau, now tasked with journeying across this insane world, suffering and struggling every step of the way as he is kidnapped by paint-drinking teens, pursued by a homicidal army veteran, and engaging in the most uncomfortable sex scene I've witnessed outside of 80s anime OVAs. Beau at one point living an entirely different life that actually goes well before being pulled back to this nightmare of a reality. Finally, Beau reaches the home of his mother, only to discover, spoilers,
of course,
that his mother is still alive, that this entire film, that everything that's happened and everyone he's interacted with has all been an elaborate test of his love and loyalty to her, which he has failed. She rages at him, screaming what a constant disappointment he is and has always been, and now failing to even make it to her own funeral. How he has always been a coward, avoiding engaging with her or anyone else. How humiliating it is to have a son like this. And finally, Beau just breaks. He kills her. In the film's final scene, Beau sails out into the ocean, where for the first time, it's just him. And he's free. Free of the expectations of his mother, of the agony and terror that other people bring. He no longer needs to be afraid, because for the first time, he is truly alone. Only for Beau to find himself surrounded by a massive nautical stadium filled with everyone he has ever known, including his mother, who is somehow still alive.
What kind of Truman Show garbage is this?
Who all together put Beau on trial, combing through footage of his entire life, isolating his worst moments and vilifying him for them. And Beau tries to explain, he pleads with them, he says that he's done his best. It does not matter. This is how everyone sees him. Therefore, this is what Beau is. He is a terrible son, a terrible person, and will now be devoured by some gargantuan aquatic monstrosity. The reason I love this film so much is that through all the surreal, unhinged social nightmare Beau endures, what it ultimately says with this final scene is that there is little we fear more than a room full of people judging us. because what they see, we are. Now that's frightening. And it brings us to the final movie we're going to talk about that horrifically expands on that idea.
Oh god,
And
it's
this
more?
one, to me, is the king of social anxiety horror. Our protagonist is Pete, and Pete is getting ready to spend the weekend with his college friends for his birthday. He's in his early 30s and hasn't seen his friends in many years, but you can hear the excitement in his voice as he tells his girlfriend about them. He used to be known as the captain of the party, the group's leader, affectionately known as the Skipper or Skippy. Skippy P is excited not only to get the old gang back together, but to share with his friends all the good deeds and charity work he's done since then, to show them how much he's grown as a person. And so, when he finally reaches the secluded country manor the reunion will take place at, he pulls up, Deruda Sandstorm blaring from his car stereo with a primed bottle of champagne in hand, and enters the mansion to find nothing. No friends, no welcome, just emptiness. Pete sits alone for hours, and you can see the excitement leak out of him until late that night, finally, his friends arrive.
What the fuck? Yeah, my thoughts exactly. Pete, what are you doing here? Oh, no. George's invite. That was a joke, mate. No, seriously, I mean, why would George want somebody else's birthday at his house?
All my friends hate me?
All my friends hate me. Pete's friends welcome him, but there's something odd in the way they speak to him, pointing out little things about him that are different. The way he speaks, his facial hair. They ask him if he's doing all right. There's something so subtle and hard to pin down in how they interact with Pete. But you can feel it. You can feel it in their body language, how they lean away from Pete as they talk to him, or their mannerisms, how Pete will be the only one not served breakfast, forcing him to get it himself. Or the vague allusions they make to Pete's past sins. And stranger still, while this is meant to be an intimate reunion of old friends, there's someone here that Pete does not recognize. An unusual man who is loud and abrasive and who constantly ridicules Pete but no one else, and doesn't seem to respect Pete's personal boundaries. And yet, Pete's friends think he's hilarious. They treat this man the way Pete remembers being treated. Pete tries to shake the cloying feeling that something is wrong, but things only grow more uncomfortable. Some of his friends seem like these unhinged versions of the people he remembers, doing obscene amounts of drugs and pitching Pete these ridiculous business ideas. And others just feel distant and cold, like when the group goes pigeon shooting and Pete fails to hit a single target. They all seem silently furious at him. And Pete tries.
I mean, to be fair, if you've never done it before, clay pigeon shooting is pretty hard.
To talk to them. He tries to tell them about his charity work, but he is constantly interrupted and ignored. And you watch as slowly his confidence crumbles. There's one shot where for 60 entire seconds, Pete agonizes over how to wear his shirt, buttoning and unbuttoning, and when he finally decides, this happens.
Fuck, you make an effort, mate.
It's funny, but it's so cruel, and making it crueler is that occasionally there'll be these little moments of warmth, some echo of what these friendships used to be, only to vanish, leaving Pete more lost than ever. Like in this one scene that just absolutely kills me, where everyone's sitting around drinking, and for the first time the entire movie, Pete starts to relax. He laughs and reminisces, sharing stories and memories from college, and just when everything is feeling normal, this happens.
Listen, Pete. Just so you know, Not doing too well.
What?
This weekend so far, I mean, you've been a bit crap, haven't you?
All My Friends Hate Me is everything we've been talking about this entire video.
And she just outright says it. Okay, honestly, at that point, I'd have to wonder if I was like on like some sort of hidden camera show or something like this, because that is just weird.
Laser focused to torture this character who is humiliated as his social standing among his friends falls lower and lower, who is constantly watched and scrutinized, particularly by this strange man, who, whenever Pete reveals any detail about himself, writes it down in a little notebook, all contributing to this mounting sense of paranoia. Why are Pete's friends being like this? Who is tampering with his medication, and who is this man? Why is something about him so strangely familiar? And what is the terrible feeling that comes over Pete when he sees the image of a little girl on the man's phone screen? But the true horror of this movie, and social anxiety horror in general, comes in its final scene.
Oh god, how does this get even worse? Did he run over that? Is that little girl the guy's daughter, and he ran over her? And like he hit her with his car in college and like was able to hide it or something like that? Is that what this is?
As All My Friends Hate Me enters its final scene, you know something is coming. The awkward interactions, the constant biting disapproval, the strange man. There has to be a reason for all this. A reason that may be tied to the big surprise that all Pete's friends keep alluding to. The evening begins with Pete coming downstairs, only to discover all his friends dressed like him. Specifically, different versions of him. All the different people he's been over the course of his life. It's surreal, but before Pete can steady himself, they enter a large room with a stage, through the curtain of which emerges a strange man dressed like Pete and begins performing a ghoulish impersonation of Pete, mimicking how he talks, mocking the fact that Pete is constantly bringing up his charity work, his traveling, how refined he now is compared to his friends, and everyone around Pete howls in delight. Finally, Pete can't take it anymore. He erupts, humiliated, scared, and furious. And in that flood of emotion, he finally recognizes the strange man behind all this. Pete tells a story of how, in his childhood, he and his friend used to call a young, mentally disabled girl who was terrified of dogs. They'd bark down the phone at her in an attempt to scare her. However, the last time they did this, the girl became so frightened that she tried to hide in a plastic bag, in which she suffocated and died. Because of the indirect nature of the incident, no criminal charges were ever filed. That girl is the girl on the man's phone screen. He is her brother, here to take revenge on Pete in the most subtle and insidious way possible. Pete, through tears, apologizes.
I'm so sorry.
And the man responds,
Don't be. Why? 'Cause that's not me, mate.
This man is
What?
not the girl's brother. The picture on his phone is his daughter. He's actually just some guy that Pete and his friends met in a pub in college. That's the surprise. That's it. Baffled, hurt, and exhausted, Pete explodes, demanding to know what is happening. If this isn't revenge, then what is it? Why are all his friends acting so strange? And they reveal something so much more disturbing than whatever Pete was imagining. There is no conspiracy. There is no plan to hurt Pete. He's the one who's been acting strange. And I think the real brilliance of this movie is that they're right. When you first watch All My Friends Hate Me, it's hard not to feel for Pete, not to see this entire scenario from his perspective and empathize with the gnawing paranoia he's experiencing. But on rewatching it, you realize that Pete does think he's better than them. He is constantly talking about his own charity work, and he belittles his friends' ideas and doesn't ask them questions about their own lives or even know what they do for a living. He just shames them for being the way they used to be, and they point out, "We haven't changed, Pete. You have." And then comes the most pathetic moments of the entire movie.
I'm still all Pete. I'm still Skippy.
No, you're not.
Yeah, who is this Skippy, by the way? Is it you?
Yeah, I was confused when you mentioned that earlier.
One of the cruelest things you can do to a person is take away their perception of themselves.
Oh.
That's what happens, Pete, here. He learns that he was never who he thought he was, that this idea of Skippy, that was never how anyone saw him. And in this scene, he sees his true self reflected in everyone around him. In the final scene of the movie, Pete's idea of who he is and how people see him has been so thoroughly dismantled that he asks his fiancée, does she still want to marry him? And she replies, no. Before telling him that it was just a joke, that of course she'll still marry him. But Pete, unable to tell what's real and what isn't anymore, just sits there in silence, unsure of who he is and how he's perceived, now in complete existential freefall. Because other people aren't a part of our reality. They are our reality. Believe it or not, what this all brings us back to is the corporate comedy workshop from the start of this video. You remember from like 25 minutes ago? Wait, hold on.
A lot longer than 25 minutes, my friend. Yeah, I don't think you've made... just aside, I don't think... Like, when was the last video Super iPatch Wolf made that wasn't at least an hour long? Favorite things of 2023... It doesn't really count. The summer 2023, pro wrestling. Cruelest video game. Okay, yeah, that was a year ago. Yeah, okay.
Oh god! This is a scene from the TV show The Curse, and The Curse is a show about insincerity. It's about what we become when we try and present ourselves as something we are not. And like everything we've talked about, is an absolute social nightmare.
Oh
what
god.
Has haunted me about this show is its final episode, which I need to talk about. So, spoilers.
Of course.
You know,
yay.
It begins with Asher waking up one morning only to find that he is pinned to his own ceiling, and I cannot stress how strange this is in the context of The Curse. Aside from a single little girl who might or might not have psychic powers, nothing close to this has happened.
Pinned to the ceiling? What?
Astor and his wife Whitney scramble to understand what is going on, but there is no reason. There's just this impossible gravity pinning him to the roof.
Oh, so literally, like, there's some sort of weird... I thought when he said pinned, like, literally, like, pinned or nailed to the ceiling. Okay.
Astor scrambles to escape the house, to escape whatever force has taken hold of him, but when he does, rather than the phenomenon stopping, he just keeps falling upwards, clinging to a tree branch, begging the people around him for help. But they all think he's insane. They ignore his pleas and try and cut him down.
So what about the girlfriend? What happened to her? She saw this happen!
Until eventually, he just plummets into the deep, never-ending void of the sky, where only he exists. I've thought about this scene constantly since I watched The Curse, and I think it's in some ways the entire reason this video exists. I can't speak confidently as to what it means or what the creators intended. Maybe it's karmic justice for all the shitty things Asher does. Or maybe it's just Nathan Fielder and Ben Safdie fucking with us.
Yeah, probably.
My
That's a very
take,
real
however,
possibility.
If there's one nauseating thread that runs through every episode of The Curse, it's Asher's inability to make a genuine connection with anyone around him.
So he literally loses the ability to stay connected to the earth. Okay.
To his wife, to his friends, to the people he thinks he's helping, to his fucking corporate comedy workshop. But it's like he can't help isolating himself through insincerity, and in return is made feel alone by everyone around him. He has no genuine connections. He has nothing tying him to this earth. And so, he falls. He falls to a place where no other people exist, where it's just him. Then, he's gone. Other people are the mirrors through which we perceive ourselves. Without them, we do not exist.
At this point, I've kind of said most of what I wanted to say about social anxiety horror, but over the course of making this video, there's this old memory I just couldn't get away from. My therapist has told me that I need to stop processing trauma through YouTube videos. Well, Irene, looks like you lose again.
That is a coincidence and a half.
I was about 12 on a Friday evening playing some ancient version of Street Fighter or Tekken, and I get a phone call from a private number. And when I answer, there's no one on the other ends, just the gentle buzz of phone static. And
yeah, I've gotten those a fair number of times, yeah.
Hang up.
See, your problem is you picked up the phone. I don't pick up the phone anymore unless they have caller ID.
And the moment I do, the phone rings again.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Continuing on for my last thought. My whole thing is, if somebody wants to get in touch with me, they can leave a message.
I answer, and again, nobody's there. But this time, I stay on the line just a little longer, and as I do, I notice something. Pushing through the gentle hum of static, I can hear the soft rhythm of someone breathing. I ask again if anyone's there, and again I don't get a response. I hang up again, and again my phone rings. Again private number, again silence, and again I hang up.
Why do you keep picking up the
This
phone?
repeats 7 or 8 times until finally I turn my phone off. And when I turn it back on, hours later that evening, within seconds, it starts to ring again. This goes on the entire weekend and into the following week, but soon it's not just phone calls. I start getting text messages, and they're strange and aggressive, but what's really unsettling is that the person sending them, they're not a stranger. They know things about me. They know the people I know.
Okay, I'm having a complete brain fart here. Did Wolf say that this actually happened to them, or is this like some sort of weird dream that he had? Because I can't remember what he said this was.
They know what I look like. They know where I live. And it starts to get really weird. So I block the number and I think that's it, but it isn't. The phone calls don't stop, and I start to get even more text messages.
This
And
just sounds like a
sometimes they're just
stalker
weird
problem.
and cruel, but sometimes it's someone pretending to be people I know and trying to meet up with me. And the scary part is that these messages, they're not just coming from one number. I'm getting texts from around a dozen different phones, and this was early 2000s Ireland. Burner phones, temporary numbers, those did not exist. These had to have been people.
Yeah, so this almost sounds like... Okay, so this was real life. Okay, so this sounds like something you should have gone to the cops with.
I start to ask my friends who these people are or why this is happening, and they tell me that they don't know. But the fucked up part is that after a while, I stopped knowing whether to believe them. This goes on for months, and then one evening my phone rings, again private number, and I answer expecting the usual silence, but for the first time, there's a voice. The voice of a grown woman. She's singing. She sings the entire chorus to 90s hit song Ghetto superstar in this low, shaky, crawling tone. She's not a bad singer. I have never been so afraid. Not long after this, the phone calls, the text messages, they just stop. And years later, I would discover one of the people responsible, and later in life, punch him in the back of his head during his wedding ceremony. And O'Grady, if you're seeing this, you'll notice that hasn't happened yet.
I'm sorry, what? Was this just one giant prank?
That's because I'm waiting for you to get married. Maybe this story doesn't sound like much after everything else we've talked about, but to this day, I have never felt a fear like that. And I think in a way, I've kinda always been looking for something to contextualize that fear. And I think that's what this video is. Horror can be anything. It can be the fear of a knife-wielding stranger or impossible monster, or it can be the fear of the space between you and other people. The fear that maybe one day the people around you will see that you are not enough. And worse, it's horror that's your fault.
Yeah.
You weren't funny enough, you weren't interesting enough, you weren't sensitive enough. Through the mere act of being, you
Are not
are
enough.
not enough. And you can struggle, you can buy nice clothes and read interesting books, but you will never stop being you. And that will never stop being deficient. And someday, the people around you will see that. That's the horror of social anxiety, and I think it is a deeply human and universal fear. But the thing about horror is that it lets us explore those fears, and in doing so, realize that we're not the only ones who feel them. And I think that's what's great about media like this. It's like, oh, cool. This shit scares other people too. I guess I'm not alone in that. And I think that's good. I think that's why social anxiety horror is important. It's also made me realize how becoming a YouTuber and tying my livelihood to a massive collection of amorphous strangers was probably a mistake.
Yeah. But what are you gonna do? Can't change it now.
Get your Eye Patch Wolves t-shirts now!
Friends, hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, maybe head on over to eyepatchwolves.com where you can check it.
Oh god, I can't after that video. I mean, there's a reason I don't watch movies like that, because I don't like being stressed out. This entire video was just constant examples of like stressed out, and it's like, oh, the human brain is so fallible and can be like tricked in so many numerous ways, and like how you are not your own person, you only matter in the eyes of other people. I can't. I mean, I don't know how much I'm gonna have to cut out from that, me taking my mental reset break in the middle of the recording there. But I like learning about the human body. We are exceedingly complex machines. And I like hearing about all the ways that we try to figure out, like, what makes us tick. And how, like, this glob of meat that we have in our heads tries and sometimes fails to work and all that. But it's stuff like this, like, especially hearing about all those times where somebody just called a fast food joint and just without question, they just started doing what it was saying. And that stuff genuinely terrifies me. The fact that some people can be so easily manipulated. And I say some people because, like, I know throughout this entire video I've been constantly saying, oh, I wouldn't have done that, oh, I wouldn't have fallen for that, oh. But at the end of the day, I've never been put in one of these, in a situation anything like any of these before. So maybe I would. I don't know. I won't know until I do. And at the same time, I don't want to have to go through one of these in the first place. Yeah, I mean, that'll be it for now. So yeah, of course, as always, yeah, original video plus, link to the first part will be in the description as always. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.